Hi there, Dave Markham here for You A Way of Life. This is our Tuesday night class. And tonight we're on the 10th, 10th session. Time does fly when you're having a good time, doesn't it? We've been talking about the first principle of Unitarian Universalism, that we covenant together to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And we've been talking about what that means. This idea of a person. And it's interesting that we pay lip service to this, but in our society, we don't believe that people have inherent worth and dignity. The whole campaign that's come about after Michael Brown's killing in Ferguson and Eric Garner in Staten Island, New York City, that Black Lives Matter. Do you believe that in 2015 this has become a meme in our culture, that Black Lives Matter, reminding us of this fact since so many of us appear to have forgotten? And the racism which we see in our culture is not necessarily individual racism. I think we've learned to be politically correct. However, our institutions and groups and practices are very racist. And we don't see that until it's brought to our attention, and then we're ashamed of ourselves and very embarrassed and don't want to talk about it for fear that we will have to acknowledge that we are not the people or the persons that we profess to be. That's part of human nature. I also, besides being a Unitarian Universalist, am a student in A Course in Miracles. And this week I've been studying the section in Chapter 2 on the altar of God. Now, I know the language might put some people off. It's a metaphor, it's symbolic. Please do not take it literally. But I think the ideas pertain to our first principle. And one of the things, in my opinion, as well as many others, that Unitarian Universalist lacks is any kind of spiritual depth. We get very focused on our fellowship and social justice activities, and we do not, as a denomination, have any particular practices for looking within to facilitate our own spiritual growth and development. Whatever practices Unitarian Universalists have discovered to help in that process, they have adopted from other faith traditions, which is perfectly okay. However, that is to say that because we are an amalgamation of people who join together from multiple faith traditions or none, we do not have a common practice that binds us together, which I think is sometimes a detriment to the ability of our faith to facilitate our growth and development, and also to use as a foundation to recruit other people who might benefit by Unitarian Universalism. At any rate, it says in the section on the altar of God, since the separation, defenses have been used almost entirely to defend against the atonement, and thus maintain the separation. This is generally seen as the need to protect the body. Now, that's a mouthful if you're not familiar with the Course. The separation is the idea that when we were born, we were separated from the oneness with God. And that cosmic consciousness, that participation in the oneness, is what is referred to as the atonement. Or if you break that up into syllables, it would be at one meant. We are all drops of the ocean, and we identify ourselves and other people as being individual, isolated drops. But the reality is that we all are part of a whole. We're all parts of the ocean. Emerson talked about the oversoul. Having grown up during the 60s and the hippies, the hippy-dippy days, we talked about cosmic consciousness. And it teaches in the course that the evolutionary goal of human existence is to achieve the at-one-ment, the atonement. I define the at-one-ment as when everybody loves everybody all the time. That's heaven. And obviously we're a long way from that, although I think we've made progress. We certainly are aware that we're deficient. That's why we have these memes like Black Lives Matter and the outrage against date rape and domestic violence and genocide and other forms of discrimination. They seem to come and go depending on the needs of our society, whether it's fighting for the rights of gay marriage and the LGBT community or other people who are subjugated and oppressed. But the point being made here is that the defenses that we utilize to resist the at-one-ment usually gets focused on the body. We're all afraid of getting hurt or getting killed. And the Course teaches, of course, and we all know this, right, that we're not the body. Now, as a former Roman Catholic, I was taught that the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And yet it says in the Course in Miracles, perceiving the body as a temple is only the first step in correcting this distortion, because it alters only part of it. The next step is to realize that a temple is not a structure at all. Its true holiness lays at the inner altar around which the structure is built. So if my body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit is indwelling, right? The temple is not the thing that has inherent worth and dignity. It is what is within. The Course goes on and says, spiritual sight, on the other hand, cannot see the structure at all because it is perfect vision. It can, however, see the altar with perfect clarity. In other words, looking at somebody's body does not see the divine spark within. And we always try to make ourselves more attractive with the clothes we wear and the cosmetics, and we get worried as we get older that we have wrinkles and liver spots, and it's all nonsense. It's a great distraction from what we should be focused on, which is the spirit in the inner temple. And as it says, in a perfect world, we wouldn't even have bodies or need bodies. We could just see that inner light regardless. Now, if you work with people with disabilities, very often we find their physical disability or their mental or cognitive disability somewhat off-putting or difficult. And yet, even with people with disabilities, we can look beyond their bodies and their cognitive capacity and see that they too are children of God and have an inner light that is part of the inner light that we enjoy and possess. It goes on and says some interesting things in this chapter or section of A Course in Miracles. Here's one of my favorite. Tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As a psychotherapist, I see this all the time. People have significant distress and problems in their life, and they've tried multiple ways of limiting that stress or overcoming it, many times making the problem worse. For example, if they resort to alcohol or drugs or promiscuity or gambling or compulsive overeating or undereating or workaholism, while they've been able to alter their mood with their compulsive behavior, nonetheless, their distress is still there. And finally, somebody will say to the person, listen, why don't you go see a counselor? Because the person feels they have no other place to turn to. They've tried this, they've tried that, they've talked to this person, talked to that person. Nobody knows what to do. So, the upshot of the whole thing is you need to go see a counselor. You need therapy. And so into my office they come, and I hear their story, which is usually full of suffering and distress, but also is the golden opportunity for change. Because the tolerance for pain is very high in some instances. But it's not without limit. Sooner or later, if you don't kill yourself, you're going to hit bottom, as they say in AA. And then you're going to have to deal with what's going on within you and in your life. It goes on and it says, spiritual vision looks within and recognizes immediately that the altar has been defiled and needs to be repaired and protected. The alcohol didn't save you. The drugs aren't going to save you. The promiscuity is not going to save you. More work is not going to save you. All these mistakes and dead ends and attempts to resist looking at the will of God haven't worked. So part of hitting bottom is when, as they say in the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous, I came to realize that my life was unmanageable. I just can't do this anymore. And the second step is I realized I had to turn it over to my higher power, whatever I conceive my higher power to be. So the inherent worth and dignity, the way that is spoken of in the Course in Miracles, is the inner altar where the spirit resides, often is clouded and covered with muck. And part of what needs to happen in our life if there's going to be spiritual growth is there needs to be a crack in the muck so the light can come in. That was a verse from Leonard Cohen, I believe. There is a crack in everything. That's where the light comes in. That's it for tonight. Thank you for being with me. I appreciate your listening to me and giving me an opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts and ideas. I haven't got any comments yet. I wish you would send me some at davidgmarkham@gmail.com or leave a comment under here. I don't know if anybody's looking at these, and if they are, that's fine. If not, that's okay too. But I'm hoping that people find it of some use, either for your own personal edification, or if you want to use it in a small group ministry or adult religious ed class, that would be fine with me too. But let me know what you think. I know I can always improve, and I look forward to your feedback so that I can better address what some of your desires and preferences and needs might be. All right? Thanks for being with me. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye.